Welcome to My Body, My Bump, My Baby, where we help women be empowered, intentional mothers. This podcast is best enjoyed sipping tea or taking a stroll in nature. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be substituted for professional psychological or medical advice, diagnoses, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician, midwife, or other qualified health provider with any questions about your personal situation, health, or medical condition. Welcome to My Body, My Bump, My Baby. Today, Hannah and I are going to get into a little bit of discussion on what unmedicated birth is and what it looks like. We're moving beyond technical. Like, we're not talking so much about the medical side of it, the things you need to know that you can find in a book like dilation and those type of things. We're not talking about that stuff. What we're talking about is the experience of birth and what you can expect from it.
One of the reasons why we wanted to touch on this is because in both of our experiences, a lot of times this gets overlooked. The path that a woman travels that we often see is they get pregnant, they schedule their appointments, they get to the point where they're either at the hospital or scheduling an induction, and then they birth their baby through that system. But there's so much more to it that can truly impact a human being and a woman and how they birth their baby and the experience that they have. And it's emotional, it's mental, it's spiritual, it's beyond that physical piece.
Right. It's like we look at this one element, so I teach childbirth classes, and we have, this really quick section called Labor 101. And it's like just the medical, buzzwords, mumbo jumbo that you need to know to understand this if you're like an analytical person. And then at the end of teaching that, so, you like dilation and how many centimeters and, all of that, medical stuff. And at the end of that, I ask the pregnant people, do you feel like you know what it's going to be to birth your baby now? And they all look at me like eyes blinking like, no, because all of that medical stuff does not explain the experience of birth whatsoever. And I will say, I think it's impossible to explain the actual experience of birth because it's different for every person. Every person is going to experience it differently, but there are a lot of things that are similar that we will go through.
Mm-hmm. And something that I see often too, well, not I see often, I get sad for women that don't have the opportunity to learn and have the knowledge to understand how incredibly powerful this event is for their lives. Because, I would argue, and I think we've said this on other podcasts, that birthing a child and how it changes you too is more important than your wedding day, if you have a wedding. That is, to me, one of the utmost, amazing things in your life that can influence how you go forward and where you were in your past.
And who you are as a person, as a mother or a parent. Right. And each one has that level of impact. I think a lot of us don't quite realize that until maybe afterwards. And so the idea is for us to shine the light on that a little bit and really help the people out there, the listeners, fully understand what birth can be, what you can expect to go through emotionally, spiritually as you're birthing your baby, and how these things can change you.
Yeah, absolutely. So we hope that this helps just even spur a few ideas in your head as well.
So, talking about the first time mom, when she's pregnant, at the beginning, it's just the awe of being pregnant, just this unbelievable thought like, oh my gosh, I can't, it's almost hard to wrap your brain around. Like, I can't believe I am growing a person. We have so many people that come into the ultrasound studio because they just have to see it. They're just like, is this real? Like, am I making this up or is this real? It's like a real thing. So there's, a lot of time spent first trimester and maybe the beginning of second trimester, just like wrapping your brain around it. And somewhere towards the end of the second trimester, beginning of third trimester, somewhere in there comes the thought of the baby's getting bigger. You're seeing yourself getting bigger. You're feeling them bigger. Everything is getting bigger. And then there's this thought of, how the heck are they going to get out of here? How are we getting this little one out?
Be pregnant forever. Just kidding.
And then you start to kind of hopefully you start to do that seeker's journey of learning, how am I going to get this baby out? What do I want this to look like? I don't know that every woman finds the right resources and tools to do that, but hopefully this chat will help with that a little bit. One of the things I think is the most daunting and most challenging for a first-time mom is trying to wrap your brain around what is the experience going to be. You can ask your friends, you can ask your sister or your mom or your grandma, and nobody really has a very good explanation. Sometimes, unfortunately, when you ask, you get these horror stories that really don't help. It actually makes it a little bit worse.
And how birth is perceived by other women surrounding you changes over the years for them as well. Like even for me, we were talking about this, and my birth story will be on the podcast sometime, but my birth story has changed in my head to some extent over the period of time that I've waited. So imagine then speaking with your mother or your aunt who had a baby 20, 40 years ago. And what is that experience for them now? What does that look like to them?
And they're not always horrible. Some of them are amazing, which is wonderful if you can pass on an amazing birth story. But some of them are also, traumatizing, and it really makes it difficult to step into this dark unknown, right? You're like, what is this thing? I have no idea what to expect. I don't have any idea. And the problem is nobody can really tell you, like, how long is it going to last? Well, I can't really tell you that, right? Yeah. Like, I don't know how long your labor is going to last. How painful is it going to be? Well, I really can't tell you that either, because I don't know how much pain you're going to experience.
They can give you averages.
Which also doesn't help.
Doesn't help because people's averages are different,
right?
too.
Your 50 might be different than my 50, right? It's like...
on a pain scale.
On a pain scale, right. So that's not super helpful. One of the things that I really love, this is from Birthing from Within, Pam England, she is an amazing teacher. And that's an amazing book, by the way, Birthing from Within by Pam England. But she does The Labyrinth. And I think The Labyrinth is one of the probably most perfect descriptions of birth or labor. And she also uses the labyrinth for postpartum or the immediate, like, coming out away from birth. But if you think about the image of a labyrinth, which is not a maze, don't get those confused. They're different, right? A maze has intentional places where you can get lost or you can get stuck. A labyrinth looks a lot like a maze. They look very similar, and they might feel very similar to going through them. But the one thing you can know about a labyrinth is if you continue to take one step forward, you're going to make it to the center. And the same is true on your way out. As long as you continue to take, in faith, one step forward, you will eventually make it out. Even if you don't know where you're headed, even if you don't know what is around the next bend, you can trust that you are going to get to the destination. The beautiful thing about it is you don't get to see the entire, most of the time, if it's a really good labyrinth, you don't get to see the entire labyrinth when you embark. You only know about the gate or the entry place. And that's kind of what birth is. Like, when you're preparing for birth as a first-time mom, it's like, well, I know labor will start. And then from there, I'm not really sure what it's going to look like or feel like or how it's going to unfold. And so there is that whole element of having to trust in a process that is vast and that is unknown and maybe a little bit intimidating.
Mm-hmm. And as a first, you're pregnant. You have to either put that trust there, or there really isn't another way. The other way is being directed by others.
Well, the other way is putting your trust in somebody else.
Yeah, true.
Which may work for some people, but some people that's going to fall short. I mean, think about it this way. Whenever you want something, like just in a very simple term, if I am very passionate and I want to do something or I want something done, it's always better if I do it myself because I'm going to do it to my expectations and to my needs, and it'll turn out the way I hope it will turn out, versus if I give that to somebody else who doesn't know my expectations and doesn't know my needs. They're just going to do the best that they can, but it's not necessarily going to suit me, you know? So handing it over to somebody else, while it might sound like a good idea because they have experience maybe in that thing, they don't have experience in you personally, you know?
And your internal thoughts.
Right.
And desires.
And your backstory and your history and
Very
your,
true.
you know, all of your past things that make you the wonderful you that you are.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's mom kind of getting ready to like step into this thing. Like, what is this? That's the first time mom. Second time mom is a whole different story, right? She's been there, done that. Now she actually knows what she's getting into. What comes up? You're in that place. Mm-hmm. What comes up for you? Like being pregnant and knowing like this is in the future.
You still hear the same types of things of, oh, you're second time mom. Most second-time moms have a quick labor, and so it's still that I'm working on clearing my head, and I know to an extent what to expect. I know what I'm doing like little bunny ears pain felt like last time, and I don't really see it being more challenging, I guess, to an extent. But that's also concerns me because I need to work on seeing it as a clean slate because I know that it's its own birth and this baby is different too.
I love that. I think it's important to like process the past birth as it is, you know, its own experience and make space for a clean slate for the new story to unfold. And that new story can be whatever it needs to be. And it's not necessarily going to look just like it did before. No. Most of the time, it actually doesn't. No. Most of the time, each one is very different.
Yeah, it could be more challenging time-wise. It could be more challenging sensation-wise. It could be more challenging experience-wise from like where you are, like your emotions behind it, who's with you can be different. I know mine will be different. I mean, also the location of where you're birthing might be different as well. Mm-hmm. So that can play into it
100%.
Into it too. And so it's, again, learning to release expectations.
Yeah.
I like that. At the same time, I'm releasing expectations, but I refuse to have zero. I mean, everything that I say, and we've talked about this, and I think in another episode at some point, maybe not, but you still have to basically believe it to achieve it. You can't say, like, for me, if I were to say I want to have everything and then, like, I want to have a home birth, but if I really need to transfer, I will. For me, that's not going to be the right thing because then maybe I will transfer. So I'm going to imagine and I'm going to envision having a birth at home and what that looks like for me.
Yes, set your goal. Set your goal. Make it clean, like know what you want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we talked about this in a nourishing moment one time.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So then there is not just the pregnant person. Sometimes there's partner, there's always baby, right? Partners, this is like preparing for a labor or a birth. If it's their first time, I mean, just think about this for a second. We are asking them to support us in a very big way And many partners, when they are asked to do this, have never experienced a birth before either. So they're coming in completely blind as well. And I feel like that's a very big load to carry on your shoulders, like a very big burden, because they love you, they don't want to fail you, but they also don't know what the heck to expect. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to do it. I mean, it's just as intense of thinking about birthing a baby for the very first time and what that's going to be. I feel like for partners, it's got to be just as intense to be like, how am I going to be a partner in this birth for the very first time? Because I don't know what to do or what to expect either.
Yeah. And in a partner role too, I mean, Tony has said this. That's my husband. He said this a couple of times too, but it's hard for him to see baby and pregnancy as a reality really until they hold that baby. Mm-hmm. And so as the birthing woman, you've held this baby for 9-10 months of your life and you've grown together. And so you have a little bit more of capacity of mentally and emotionally preparing and physically preparing for the experience you're going to have. But for the birth partner, they literally are, it's like walking in blindsided to some extent if they aren't prepared in other ways. Right. Tony, I mean, I remember he did a rotation in OB during my pregnancy. And so he felt a little bit better prepared. But if he hadn't seen those births, I think things would have been a little bit different with how he handled some things.
Right. Mm-hmm. I see that. And, moving forward, continuing on with this podcast, we're really going to focus on unmedicated birth. There's all kinds of different ways people can birth, but this chat today, we're focusing on unmedicated birth. And so, I'm thinking about when you were mentioning Tony doing his rotations, there is the person who is birthing with an epidural. So
he saw the differences.
Then the person without the epidural.
He saw an unmedicated birth too, and I think that was really eye-opening for him because he's like, she was on her hands and knees, and the baby just slid right out. And for him, he was just, I think, amazed at seeing that difference between, and because she was dictating also how, being told, get on the bed. She's like, no. So she was dictating what she was going to be doing because her body was telling her what to do.
I love it.
Which is different than being told to coach or push and do 3 pushes on every contraction or something along those lines, which they also saw, or he also saw.
Right. I am so glad. I mean, that is amazing. Sometimes we'll have partners who have experienced a birth before, but maybe it was like an epidural birth or it was a cesarean birth, and now they are trying to be a partner for an unmedicated birth, and it's just they're just so different. Each one is so vastly different that they're hard to say, I experienced birth before and now I know how to do it. It's just not, it doesn't really work that way. But so moving into labor, gosh, we have to be careful here because I think there's so much to say about labor and we can get pretty deep. But
the term you often hear is labor land that comes up. And I think this is where the unmedicated piece comes into play a lot about what we're talking about. It's not the same when you have medication versus unmedicated in this sense, because labor land, you can go and you go into your own head as the birthing woman, and you remain there as long as you're not disturbed in an unnatural form. So if there are disturbances, it can take you out of this wonderful meditative state where you essentially are flowing up and down and riding the waves of each surge or contraction. And it really is a very interesting experience.
Yeah, they say that labor land exists on another plane. It doesn't exist on this plane that we usually
in our physical world
live in, right? Which I think it was a training that I went to a long time ago with Gina Kirby, and she had talked about, I believe she called it theta, but
Theta waves.
She says, yeah, you go to theta, and this is, she's kind of comparing it to Laborland or using it as another term for Laborland, but she said that, a woman has to go there. There's also some sayings that you can find on like Pinterest and Instagram, but you go to this place called Laborland or theta or to the stars. Some people say go to the stars to retrieve your baby. And you must get there to retrieve your baby and then bring your baby back, which is super wonderful because and I'm jumping ahead far, far, far real quick, but when a woman who is birthed unmedicated births her baby and they lay that baby on her belly, she's not actually 100% there at that moment. Everybody wants her to be like, oh, my baby, and grab her baby and just be like, I love you. And most of the time, those women do not. They just kind of...
unmedicated or medicated?
Unmedicated. Did I say medicated?
No, you said unmedicated.
Yeah, unmedicated.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they just kind of pause. They usually don't really like slurp up their baby right away. They don't usually say a lot either. They usually kind of just don't look 100% there. And I think throws some people off because they're like, get your baby. But it's because she has to come back down.
Uh-huh.
The baby arrives before she does. So she has to like come back down from Laborland or theta or the stars.
Because you just done this thing. It's slightly shocking too.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, and you need to land back into this world, this reality, which she did not exist in prior to that. She doesn't exist there. And so, letting her just land and re-arrive at this place is also like one of the sweet moments. But
yeah, you're bringing that up and I'm like recalling this. I definitely was that because I remember being told with Oliver because he wasn't breathing. Well, a baby is attached to an umbilical cord. We're not going to get into this, which the placenta is still inside of you. Long story short, that's their oxygen or life force at that point in time. So he was still attached and he wasn't being responsive in the manner that they wanted him to.
He just didn't take his
first breath or
oxygen lung breath.
Exactly.
He was still breathing, but he just did not take his lung breath.
Exactly. And I just remember being in this like state of you're in awe, but yeah, you're in this other land. Mm-hmm. And then being told like, talk to your baby. I'm like, what the heck am I saying? Like, it didn't seem natural necessarily to me because I wasn't fully there yet.
Right.
Necessarily, or at that point in time yet. So I just remember watching the birth video too. I'm like, what? My voice was even different.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
because you were still deep in labor land.
So and it usually,
it takes most women several minutes to come out of that. So baby comes first.
Sometimes baby, it takes a while to come out of it too.
Exactly. Right. Babies, some babies will come in right away and they'll just be like, oh my God.
Which goes into labor land for baby. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me tell you what just happened.
Some of them come out and they're like,
right?
Yeah,
don't look at me. Don't touch me. It's cold. Like they are just like very like, what the heck? But some are still kind of in the journey.
Yeah.
Right. And they come in very zen.
And it depends on also the situation that they were born in. Mm-hmm. Correct me if I'm wrong, but water births often, the babies are way more calm coming out.
They because they are not
gone to water and they're like not exposed to the elements.
Mm-hmm. There isn't a vast shock
you hear about babies coming out of sleep. You see them.
Yeah.
Like they're literally like, I just did that. You're like, what?
Yeah.
Thanks.
And I will say epidural babies have come out like that I have seen, and unmedicated out of water birth babies have come out like that. But I think that sometimes they are slower to arrive as well. So sometimes, so this is where we're getting into this really, in my opinion, like my favorite place of labor and birth is where you actually do get to experience a little bit of the spirit and the body kind of separating just a little bit. So like
break.
It's not break like broken, but dividing and not being like overlapping as much.
Yeah. So creating more space.
Yes.
To be able to essentially become the mother.
Yes. Right. So when I'm talking about Laborland, mom's physical body is with us. Her physical body is doing all of the things that it needs to do, but mom's spiritual body has traveled to a new location. That's where she is. So when we're talking about arriving back, her physical body's still there and everybody thinks she's still there, but her spiritual body is not, is still coming in. Same with baby. Baby's physical body can be born, but sometimes baby's spiritual body is like, what? What? We're doing what? And then they join later, which is, it's very sweet. And it's one of the most amazing and beautiful things to watch if you know what you're looking at. I mean,
I wish all my friends would listen to this, listen to you talk about this.
Yeah,
it's so, I mean, this is the type of experience that you will never have anywhere else again in your life. No. You can go into theta meditation. You can get into a theta state in a meditative practice, but you cannot feel this
it's not
any other way.
They also, and this again is jumping ahead to, post-birth, that bliss, that high, it's not recreatable in any other way except for right here. And this one, I don't usually like to split hairs on how birth happens, but this one is extremely unique to unmedicated birth. It's going to be the strongest, most potent bliss that you can ever experience. They've actually tried to create it pharmaceutically, and they cannot. No. It's just not
I can never imagine
recreatable.
any type of drug that's recreatable
Can match
like
that.
this. Yes.
Yeah.
And I just remember afterwards thinking, before your hormones start adjusting again, you're like, I'm ready to have another baby right now. I want to feel this forever.
Yes. Yeah. It's an amazing place. Now, this is, and I really think I would like to do a nourishing moment on this a little bit more in depth in the future, but this is where, in my opinion, birth is the embodiment of duality. We live in a world where duality rarely exists together. You usually have bad, negative, yucky goes in that box. Good, amazing, beautiful goes in this box. But rarely do you put box 1 and box 2 into the same box and they shake them up and they intermingle. That is not the way we live in this life. We always want them separated, right? But birth does not do that. Birth is
the cusp of everything.
It's duality embodied. Yeah. They're at the same time. It's
death
so beautiful.
And birth,
walking hand in hand.
Fear and happiness.
Yes.
Yeah. It's. Even think about a surge or contraction. What you ups and downs of the waves. It's just opposite.
Intensity right next to calm. That's the beauty. There are some faiths that say that the divine is actual duality. Not all faiths believe that, but the divine is duality. And I love that birth brings you into that place where you actually get to experience what they're talking about. Because when you're talking about that beautiful, blissful state that you had when you were right after I had my baby, I was like, this is amazing and I definitely want to do it again. You had just came from the most intense experience of your entire life. Yeah. You had literally 2 breaths before that was in oh my gosh kind of place. And then just on the other side, married right up next to it, is this beautiful, beautiful bliss of love. Yeah.
And then fast forward to a year and a half later and you think, how am I going to do that again? It changes. Yeah. It really, it just proves your point. Cool.
And Laborland for the partner. Partners. I just want to let partners in on this.
Starved.
They get to experience the duality too. Yeah. They're going to, I had this one papa, I remember, he was so amazing. He was such a good birth partner, but he literally gave all of himself, every last ounce that he had to help her. And when that baby was born, that guy fell apart. He was passing out as the baby was being born. His knees swelled up because he had been standing too long.
no.
I mean, he was a mess, and nobody would have known before
He
that
doesn't
baby
get the
was
hormone
born.
ride.
No.
Yeah,
Well,
to support it as much like
As
like the
much.
oxytocin, the protected
Right.
hormone piece of it.
right. But for my partners, the duality is there for them too. It's a hard ride for partners.
Because they see it from the outside too happening.
Well, they experience hard stuff on their own, and then they watch the person that they love doing something so intense and so hard. If you guys haven't listened to the Nourishing Moment, I think it was one woman's birth story who changed the entire line or changed the lineage. There's a beautiful story of a partner in there who is amazing. But so they're experiencing hard stuff. They're exhausted. They're giving everything. They're watching and participating in something that is hard. But I've been a partner for lots and lots of births. And the thing that is most, I feel that is a big blessing to me is just to participate and be in that space. I can't even say this without getting emotional. There's something beautiful, magical, and divine watching a woman in labor land. A woman in labor land literally glows. You can almost see that she has tapped into a spiritual, divine world because she looks different, she sounds different, she moves different, and the space has this like radiance in it that's just kind of oozing out of her, and you feel it. Like you feel it in your body. And it's amazing. You also get to go through the struggle with her. Like you get to hold her hand. Nobody does the struggle with her, but we get to hold her hand in the struggle, and we get to walk at least very close up to the edge with her. And so when she comes out the other side, triumphant and strong, we get to experience the bliss in that way. Just experiencing a miracle. I've watched hundreds of babies being born, and it never ceases to amaze me that when a baby's head is coming out, I really do feel like it's a magical, blessed moment. Like I am lucky to participate in something so beautiful. And for the partners who are like, it's not quite clicking, that's not their fault, by the way. They're just, that it makes sense for the way that they're wired. It's not quite clicking. It's not quite clicking. And then it does. I had this one papa. He was a military man, and he was like, he just didn't get it. He goofed off the entire childbirth ed class. Whenever we had like prenatal visits, he was texting and just really disconnected. He planned a vacation for 1 week after the baby was supposed to be born to do a whitewater rafting trip. Like it was not clicking for him. But when that baby was born, in that instance, when her little head came out, I saw in his eyes for the first time, it was like this look, and he's not the only one. Most of the partners will have this look. It's a look of like shock, surprise, love, amazement, all wrapped up in one breath, just like, and in that moment, in his eyes, I was like, there it is.
And that's the picture the birth photographers don't ever get.
No.
Next time around, I might actually ask for that one. I don't care about the head coming out. I just care about that face.
This particular one, the photographer was Monet Montry, and she actually did get his face. Mm-hmm. She did. She got that moment.
Both of them probably. Wow, it's so cool.
I don't. I think it's just his face. But it was the everything. It was like that moment where you could see, he could see.
Yeah.
Like he was there. He had arrived. So for partners, Laborland is vastly different, but also some similarities, and no less amazing and beautiful than it is for the laboring person. And baby. Yeah. Baby, baby has its own interesting role in labor land. And I don't think that we ever forget about baby because we're always worried about baby. But baby is in many respects in a place of intuitive participation at this point. They actually
kick it off in unmedicated labor or birth.
They kick it off. They actually have a lot that they do. They kick it off. They have something called cardinal movements that they have to perform in order to get out correctly. And they also have to participate and stay calm so that the whole transition goes well. And then when they're being born, their body has some things that has to happen in order for them to make that transition from being in mom with the water and the umbilical cord to being on the outside. So there's all kinds of wonderful things that they are doing, but they're doing it more in an intuitive manner, but they still have a very big,
which is
strong
really cool
role.
to think back, even for ourselves, like tapping into our own intuition is quite challenging in this day and age.
Yeah.
And this baby can just do it like that because they are so in tune with the spirit.
Well, and they are not, thank you for saying that. There are some that believe that that babies, even after they're born, are more connected with the divine and spirit than they are connected with this material world.
And it doesn't matter what spirit it is. It's whatever spirit that their belief is in or that your belief is in.
Right.
My aunt is a psychologist, and I tear up every time we tell this story. So sorry, apologize in advance for that one. But she talked about how she had this story of parents came in and they were worried about their 3-year-old or 4-year-old because she kept wanting to be left alone with their baby who was a couple months old. And makes me cry every time. And so finally my aunt was like, well, why don't you put a camera in there and let her be left alone because she wants to close the door and have a conversation, or what does she want to do? They were worried she wanted to hurt the baby or something like that out of jealousy. So they do that. They allow her to close the door. She goes in, and she's talking to baby and is like, baby, remind me of what God's like because I'm beginning to forget.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. And so I always tear up during that because it just shows how connected such young children can be before they are influenced by this external world that we have.
Right.
And during pregnancy and at the birth, that is some of the most intense connections they are ever going to experience in their life. And if we too, as birthing women, can tap into that to also put the trust that they know what they are meant to do because they have the spirit, whatever that belief is behind them, it's a pretty incredible thing to think about. And to use that power.
100%. There's a couple of things that I like to, that I have noticed about babies or pregnant women. You know how they say that there's a pregnant woman glow?
Yeah. I get called that all the time. I'm like, I don't feel like I'm glowing.
You are, and every
Cool. pregnant
pregnant woman glows. And it dawned on me when I first started to work with pregnant women why that was. Each body has the light of their soul within it. A pregnant body has 2 lights. So it makes sense that they glow. They have 2 lights of 2 souls within one body at the time, one external body in this world. And so they glow.
Twins or triplets.
Yeah.
Man.
Beautiful, right?
Yeah.
And here's the other thing that I noticed supporting families in birth. If you ever get the opportunity, look into a newborn's eyes. It is the most amazing thing you will ever see. And part of me thinks this is why people are so attracted to newborn babies, one, because they're cute and snuggly, but I think that there somehow at like a subconscious level that we can actually see and feel the divine in them. When I look at a baby, like right when they come out and they open their eyes, I swear you can see God. Like you can see the love and the beauty and the perfection and the wisdom of God in those little eyes. And sometimes it blows my mind. Okay, first time ever, B's personal opinion about something, which I probably shouldn't do, but I'm going to do it.
You sure it's the first time? Well, in this season, you're going to hear it a couple times. I'm pretty sure we planned that out, but
it sometimes bothers me the way that babies are treated in the hospital setting, because I don't think it honors the divinity of who they are. They're kind of somewhat treated like
an object,
like less human.
Oh, yeah. There's tons of, apparently my Instagram hits me with these videos all the time, or Facebook. I'm disgusted every single time I see those videos right now of just like what happens immediately after birth. This is my personal opinion too. I have started to have to just scroll past them because I think that I think it's inhumane how they're treated.
Right. Mm-hmm. Like if you could just take a moment and look in that baby's eyes and literally see the God that they are embodying in that moment, there's no way you could treat them so roughly.
Yeah. And here's the thing. It's not every experience like that.
No.
Because I also have seen experiences with birth practitioners who catch those babies, and this one made me tear up the other day. It was a cesarean section. Sorry, I'm emotional because I'm pregnant. But she pulls the baby out and guides the baby out, and then just stares into those babies' eyes and gives them the respect of, I know where you've just been. I know what you've just seen. Share with me.
Yes.
It was cool.
This is what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Just take. And nurses and doctors, I totally, wholly respect you and what you do, your education, and what you bring, because we absolutely need those skills. And I'm so grateful we have those skills. All I'm asking is to step out from the day to day, because I understand they do this, all day, every day, multiple times a day. Step out of that for just a minute and look into the baby's eyes. Just
You're
look
so
into
lucky
the baby's
to get
eyes.
to do that so many times a day too.
Yeah.
It's pretty incredible.
Goodness gracious, girl.
Yeah.
Are we going to get through this podcast in one piece?
I think that this is going to be a 2-part episode probably too, to be honest. Because Laborland takes a lot too. Just discussing all
yeah,
that.
Laborland is not, it's not small potatoes. I mean, Laborland is it. That is
the
big thing. So, with that said, all right, so we are going to have to leave you all with a cliffhanger, and we are going to turn this into a 2-part episode. Join us next time. We're going to pick up in Laborland. We're going to hit the mirror gate, the gate of greatest doubt, the gate of greatest fear, pushing, and then that final metamorphosis. And if this all sounds interesting and intriguing to you, stay tuned and keep an eye out for part 2 of Unmedicated Birth.